Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. It's late evening on the 12th of April here in the United Kingdom. And I'm just going to do a stream on hate, essentially. What is the claim that Putin is making when he says he wants to denazify Ukraine? Is there any justification for it at all? And I'm going to start by going back to 2014. Putin was apparently saying stuff about Nazification in Ukraine back in about the year 2000 or something. But I'm going to go back to 2014. And this is from Open Democracy. Back in, it was actually November 2013, there was the Maidan revolution. I say revolution, it was a protest, it was a revolution, it was a victory for the people against the then Ukrainian government, which was pro-Russian, on the basis that previously the government of Ukraine had agreed with everybody, agreed with the public that they're going to move towards unification with the EU. I say unification, that might not be the right word. They're looking for a free trade agreement with the European Union, moving much more west rather than looking east towards Russia. And in mid-November 2013, the then president of Ukraine, I can't remember his name, Yurishenko, I don't know, can't remember. He then went against it and he said he wasn't going to do it. And so students started protesting, and the protests went on from mid-November through to the end of January or February of the following year. And it eventually ended up with that government being overthrown. And all of the protests were around Kiev at the Maidan. It's called Maidan. It's a symbol and a little park right in the centre of Ukraine. So something that sort of struck me was, yeah, okay, so this had these big protests. There was something called the Million Person March there, where allegedly 1 million people were there in Kiev at the Maidan, all wanting this. And it struck me, well, what about the rest of Ukraine? I mean, Ukraine's a big country with a lot of people in it. What was it like? So I found this is from opendemocracy.net. It says, Maidan has really divided Ukraine. The values of the protesters in Kyiv are not always and not wholly shared by people in the mostly Ukrainian-speaking west and the mostly Russian-speaking east of the country. The latest data from the Democratic Initiatives Foundation and the Razumkov Center show that 50% of Ukrainians support Euromaidan as a phenomenon, 42% do not. In the west of the country, 80% are in support, 7% are not. In the east, the figures are 30% in support and 65% not in support. So there's certainly not universal agreement of wanting this type of protest. And this picture shows the languages that are spoken at home, published by the Kyiv National Linguistic University in 2009. Red is Russian, yellow is Ukrainian, and the orange in the middle is a mix of the two called Zershik. There are some other languages spoken in Ukraine. They include Ruthenian, Bulgarian, Moldovan, Romanian. But it's mainly Ukrainian, Russian, or a mix of the two. And there's a clear split between these ethnicities, shall we call them, as to whether they agreed with the Maidan protests in the first place. It says here that though Ukraine is often viewed as having a Russophone East and a Ukrainophone West, in much of the country a plurality reports speaking Zurchik, a non-standard mix of the two languages. According to this research, there's overall majority support for democracy, with 51% in favour, while 20% of Ukrainians would prefer an authoritarian government. I find that a bit weird myself. 12% are don't knows, and support for democracy varies from region to region. This research was carried out at the end of 2013, but the public has become radicalised since then. The recent clashes at Hrushevsky Street, the kidnapping of Maidan activists and the mass burning of Auto-Maidan cars have pushed the so-called right sector to the front of the active protest. Maidan protesters, minded to take a much tougher line, have united to defend the justice of their cause not only with words but with Molotov cocktails too. On 24th January, the leader of the right sector, Dmytro Yarosh, published his Algorithm of Revolution. One of its 11 points is, we carry out partisan raids in Kyiv. The earth must burn beneath the feet of the occupiers. We shall hunt down the armed gangs of the Berkut, Titushky, POR MPs and communists. So the Berkut is a bit like the police. It might be the secret service. The Titushky, I'm not actually sure what they are. The POR is the Parliament of Regions, MPs, and the communists. When a compromise has been reached, everyone who is asked what they did during Maidan or why they were against it will answer, I was fighting for Ukraine, and it will be true. Now, the right sector is pretty much what Putin is going against. The start of the right sector was during Maidan, and that, as far as I can tell, is his main focus, because this right sector has ended up as a conglomeration of far-right nationalist political parties, organisations, military regimes that have come together, and he feels they have taken over in some ways. Now, he says in Ukraine, the majority of activity by the military wings of this right sector have been aimed against the Donbass regions. Areas of Donetsk and Luhansk over in the far eastern corners of Ukraine, where most of the fighting is currently going on. So this is what the BBC was saying back in 2014. On the 28th of April 2014, the BBC did a profile of Ukraine's ultra-nationalist right sector. Now, I have no idea if you can actually hear me, so I'm just going to check. I think you can. You should be able to hear me. So this BBC profile on the right sector states, and you'll see from this picture, there's the red and the black, which is their flag. There's a red and black flag in the background. Some say that is a Nazi symbol. The symbol around his nose is also perceived to be a Nazi symbol. The right sector played a leading role in January's violent anti-Yanukovych protests in Kyiv. Yanukovych, that's his name, the ex-Ukrainian president who was pro-Russia. The right sector is the most radical wing of Ukraine's Maidan protest movement that toppled President Viktor Yanukovych in February. Originally set up as an alliance of ultranationalist groups in November 2013, the right sector is now a party, and its leader, Dmytro Yarosh, is running for president in the 25th May election, although his poll rating is negligible. Interestingly, he got in, or some of his candidates got in and became members of the next government, the interim government. Critics at home say the party's inflammatory rhetoric and violence is helping Russian media to depict Ukraine as overrun with neo-Nazis who threaten the Russian-speaking population. So that's where it starts. It's not only the Russian media depicting Ukraine overrun with neo-Nazis. Critics in Ukraine say that the party, its inflammatory rhetoric and violence, is helping that depiction. The right sector is trying to portray itself as a responsible party, but enough doubts remain about its attitude and intentions to cause unease in both pro-Kyiv and pro-Moscow camps. Protest role. Activists claiming to be right sector members were involved in Kyiv's Maidan protests from late November, but the group did not attract much attention until violent clashes with police in central Kyiv on the 19th of January, in which it played a leading role. By early February, Mr. Yarosh was saying the right sector had 500 fighters on Independence Square. That was the word I couldn't remember. Square. Maidan stands for independence. Maidan Square. And could mobilise up to 5,000 nationwide, although close observers of the protests doubt this. The numbers are much, much higher now. Ideology. A leading figure in the right sector, Andriy Tarasenko, says it aims not for closer ties with Europe, but rather to build a nationalist Ukrainian state and stage a nationalist revolution. Dmytro Yarosh calls himself a follower of Stepan Bandera, a nationalist leader who fought Polish and Soviet rule in the 1930s and 40s, but is seen in Russia and eastern Ukraine as a Nazi collaborator. And that's where the term banderistas comes from. You will often hear it from Russian Ukrainians. Mr. Yarosh rejects accusations of racism, saying he regards anyone who fights for Ukraine as a comrade. Right sector leaders have recently assured the Israeli ambassador they reject anti-Semitism along with other forms of chauvinism and xenophobia. Well, we'll see something about that in a minute. Some far-right activists interviewed by the BBC's Gabriel Gatehouse in Kyiv in early March made it clear they wanted a Ukraine just for Ukrainians. The nationalist Svoboda Party, also a significant player in the Maidan protests, now has 3 powerful posts in the interim government, and the Svoboda Party came from the right sector. The 3 powerful posts were Acting Chief Prosecutor, Deputy Prime Minister and Chairman of the National Security Council. So I'm going to play a little bit of this video, which is from Gabriel Gatehouse. This is about a minute and 10 seconds here, where people are outlining their views of what Svoboda, what the right sector actually stands for.
I asked them about their political beliefs.
Национал-социалистская тематика иногда в некоторых людях она есть проступает. Как бы, чтобы была единая нация. Но не у всех, это не заложено в основе этой организации, это у некоторых людей есть.
А у вас?
У меня лично есть.
В смысле? Объясните.
Мне как бы нравится эта идея единой нации. Я хочу, чтобы нация была единая, чтобы один народ, одна страна, одна нация.
А это подразумевается что? Что...
Как бы, чтобы чистая нация. Не то, что там, как бы у Гитлера как было, в своем роде немножко, маленько, но было, чтобы своя нация.
What about the East?
Well, that was quite interesting because it really sounds very much like Nazism, one nation, a true nation of people from Ukraine, a clean nation. Sounds like Aryanism, their own version of Aryanism, very ultra-nationalist.
I asked, what about Crimea, where many Ukrainians feel close historical ties to Russia?
Кому нравится Россия, пусть едут в Россию. Украина только для украинцев.
Ukraine will be just for Ukrainians. Let them move to Russia. It's very much like how do you say this? It's very much like turning round to somebody who's an immigrant in your country and telling them if they don't like it, they can go back home. It's a very, very far-right, anti-immigration, anti-anybody else, xenophobic, racist attitude. So it does. I mean, they can say all they like about not being Nazi, but they sound like they're just like Nazis. But that was just a young kid. This little section is an interview with one of the groups called C14. And it's the leader of C14. They've taken over the old Communist Party headquarters in Kyiv. And he's going to outline why he's not a Nazi and just a nationalist.
We got a late-night phone call from another group known as C14, inviting us to meet their leader at their new base. It turned out to be the former headquarters of the Communist Party, now occupied by the far right.
It's our general mission to totally ruin chains that connect our country with the imperial power from the past.
And that being Russia.
Yes, we can do Russia, not only Russia, Soviet Union.
Are you a Nazi?
No, I don't think I'm a Nazi, I'm a Ukrainian nationalist.
What does that mean?
The main confrontation is about that some ethnic groups have control many business structures, some economic, some political forces, and
which ethnic groups?
Russians and Jews and the Poles. It may be some non-Ukrainian group control a huge percent of some economic or political power. And of course, in this situation, Ukrainian people have some tension between it, and it causes conflicts.
So you just heard that. This is I am in favor of Ukraine for Ukrainians, and I'm not a Nazi, but I want non-Ukrainian ethnicities not to control so much economic power. and those non-Ukrainian ethnicities holding too much economic power in Ukraine are Russians, Jews and Poles. That really does remind me of the same rhetoric that was said in Nazi Germany about the Jews holding too much power, too much economic power. It's the same rhetoric that you hear in the United Kingdom and the United States about the secret societies and the Jews, the goldsmiths. They run everything. It is absolute parallels of Nazism. It's not even neo-Nazism. It's exactly the same. And I'm failing to comprehend how this can be so overt in a country that is looking to align with the European Union. And these, at this time in 2014, this area, this concept was quite small but powerful, very much like the brown shirts were back in the early 1920s. Powerful on the streets, in their groups, in their gangs, able to overcome whatever they came up against with their fists, with whatever violence they decided to undertake, which in those days included pushing groups of Jews into temples and setting them on fire, not allowing them to leave. Now, I'm failing to see a difference here, and it would be really useful if anybody does watch this and wants to leave a comment down below as to why this is not actually Nazism, just from a Ukrainian way of doing it, and why this has been allowed to come about, and why the EU, the United States, the rest of the West, the United Kingdom, and other countries have been pushing to link up with a country that has such a problem with this ultra-far-right nationalism, which is pervading much of their society.
Mr. Karas says his group consists of around 200 men. C14 is affiliated with a political party called Svoboda, or Freedom, which now controls 4 ministries in the new government, including the Ministry of Defence. 2 of its MPs were recently photographed brandishing well-known far-right numerology. 88 stands for the 8th letter of the alphabet, HH, Heil Hitler.
Now I'm going to stop this here. These 2 MPs, I think the one on the left is this guy, Alexander Sich. I'm not absolutely convinced, and I could not work out who the other guy was, but Gabriel Gatehouse says they are both MPs from the Svoboda Party, the Nationalist Svoboda Party. Now, he says 88 stands for HH, Heil Hitler. He doesn't indicate what the 14 stands for. Well, the 14 is actually rather important, as are some of these other things. You've got the wolf's angle here, which is used by some of the Ukrainian military. But what does the 14 stand for, and what does the 1488 stand for? Well, from the ADL website, 1488 is a combination of two popular white supremacist numeric symbols. The first symbol is 14, which stands for the 14 words slogan. We must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. It's white supremacist ideology. Let me go back to this picture. That's Alexander Sich and another MP in the Ukraine interim government. They were ministers. Alexander Sich was actually the deputy prime minister. The second is 88, which stands for Heil Hitler. Together, the numbers form a general endorsement of white supremacy and its beliefs. As such, they are ubiquitous within the white supremacist movement as graffiti in graphics and tattoos, even in screen names and email addresses. Some white supremacists will even price racist merchandise for $14.88. The symbol is most commonly written as 1488 or 14/88, but variations such as 14-88 or 8814 are also common. Now, this is actually being promoted by members of parliament in the interim government at the time. What has this got to do with now is possibly the question. This is from a video today by The New Atlas on YouTube. All of these things are in the description below. You'll be able to click on the links and look at them. And The New Atlas is commenting on a video by The Sun, where The Sun is actually putting out, he put out a video on the 6th of April where it says a reverend, it looks like an Orthodox priest, prays for victims of war in Ukraine's Borodyanka, and there are 4 men from the Ukrainian army stood beside him, and they are covered in Nazi paraphernalia. This is what The New Atlas has to say about it.
So right here, you got right sector, clear as day, and then they have SS Galician, and then this is SBU. This is a patch that would be worn by SBU agents. I don't know if he's actually in the SBU or not. But this is SS Galician. This is unambiguously a Nazi symbol. This isn't even a neo-Nazi symbol. This is from World War II. This is a unit in World War II that was part of the Waffen-SS, determined by the Nuremberg trials as a criminal organization. So let's dig into that a little bit. Here's Haaretz. So people can't accuse me of citing Russian media or Putin propaganda. This is from Haaretz. Ukrainian official changes tune on unacceptable march honoring SS unit, because that is a thing in Ukraine. They honor Waffen-SS war criminals in Ukraine to this day. And then they wear Waffen-SS unit patches on their uniforms to this day. And right here it says, I'm sure that the absolute majority of Ukrainians do not support it, writes the director of Ukraine's Institute for National Memory, marking a small but significant shift in Kiev's approach, because there is a serious Nazi problem, and even Haaretz is taking note. This was published May 4th, 2021. So this is an ancient history. This is very recent. They said the head of a Ukrainian government body long known for its work rehabilitating the images of Holocaust collaborators condemned an ultranationalist march in memory of a Ukrainian SS unit last week. What SS unit is that? Can you guess? I think you know already where we're going with this. Marking a small, if significant, change in Kiev's approach to the seemier aspects of its national history. Around 300 people paraded through the Ukrainian capital last Wednesday to mark the 78th anniversary of the establishment of the 14th Waffen Grenadier Division of the SS, also known as the 1st Galician, a German unit implicated in crimes against humanity. Many of the division's troops were members of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, OUN, a group which is celebrated in contemporary Ukraine for its anti-Soviet activities. And what does their flag look like? It looks like this, which is the same flag Right Sector flies, because they're all Nazis. And this is a member of Right Sector with an SS Galician patch on his uniform, glorifying not neo-Nazis, Nazis from World War II. And this is what the Sun and what Reuters put on film, published, and showed the public without explaining to them what they were looking at, and going through the effort of blurring that Nazi eagle, knowing that probably at least that most people are going to immediately recognize and start asking questions. So they blurred that out, and they hoped that their audience was too ignorant to catch everything else that they were seeing. And this is what they have done for 8 years, since the Euromaidan in 2014, where this red and black flag flew during the Euromaidan, and they said that, oh, they're just pro-democracy, liberal freedom fighters. They didn't mention that this is the flag of Nazi collaborators from World War II, and that this is still a serious problem in Ukrainian society to this day.
I'm going to stop that there. I think it's quite clear to me that there is an issue here. And why is it an issue? Well, you've got the SBU, you've got the Azov Regiment, you've got the Right Sector, you've got C14, you've got the political parties. And you've got the whole concept of Ukraine for Ukrainians, not for other ethnicities. You have got things like the Wolf's Angle, you have got the SS Galician, you have got what was some of the other. You've got this patch that's on the side of the arm, and on what I didn't show you, and what New Atlas was trying to talk about, was on this guy's, the nearest guy's other arm, there is a red patch on his left arm, which has been blurred out by Reuters or the Sun, which is a Nazi eagle. Let's see if I can find it in his video here where he shows it. He shows it here. It's been blurred out by the video editor. And I can't find where he is actually showing what the patch actually is. But you'll be able to look at it and look for it on the video, which I have linked to down below in the description. It's only a 16-minute long video. You'll be able to find it quite easily. I'm not going to try to find it while I'm on here. So I think I'm going to leave it there. I was just wanting to give a rationale as to why Putin is convinced that he needs to denazify the Ukraine. And the link to Putin with the Ukraine is the Donetsk and the Luhansk areas, which I showed earlier on. In this area, those patches of red where those are Russian-speaking Ukrainians, that is who he is trying to protect, because they have chosen to undertake referendums, which some say are bad referendums. They weren't run properly. The results are, the referendums were illegal. The results are completely at odds with anything that could have been expected, and that the referendums should be made defunct. But what you've got there is what I perceive that Russia is trying to achieve. That Dnieper River that you can see going up from the Black Sea to the right and then up through Kyiv, up to Russia, I think that is the line that Putin is attempting. Anything to the right of that will become Russian territory. Anything to the left will remain Ukrainian. I think that's what he's actually trying to achieve. He will split Ukraine in half and take half of it, bring it into Russia. All these areas will become independent republics that are aligned to Russia. So it's all the way up to Kharkov, up in the top north. Anyway, that's it. I'm going to let you go there. I've had a message saying that my audio is low on my mic. I wish somebody had mentioned that right at the beginning when they were watching, but hey, never mind. Hopefully you can increase your volume a little bit and hear this okay if you're watching in the future.